Good morning, students.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. In the last class, our topic is field control method of speed control of DC motor. In the last class, our topic was the speed control method of speed control method of DC motor. That's right. And in that method, we basically we add a resistance in field path by which we basically control the field current so that after controlling the field current we get the speed control. And on that, basically, in case of series motor in case of series motor, what we what we did we make a parallel, or I say we add a parallel resistance with field, so that by controlling this external resistance we control the current of that path, and by this we can control the field current. This method we actually have discussed, but now we can use another method to change the flux. What is the method? Suppose this is a this is only for a series motor, not for shunt motor. Suppose this is the field, and we make suppose this is supply, and we know that flux can change by changing the number of turns, and flux can be changed by varying field current. We know that. Khushbu, Khushbu,
Yes, sir.
we know that flux can be changed by changing the field current or changing the number of turns.
Yes, sir.
There are two methods. There are two methods by which we can change the flux of a coil. We can say, if there is a coil, by changing the number of turns, and by changing the current flowing through that coil, we can vary the flux. In the previous method, or say in the previous class, I have drawn the current changing method, and here we basically use the number of turns changing method. Have you understood? Khushbu, Ayush?
Yes, sir.
That means there is a basically we can change the number of turns. Suppose the pointer is here. Suppose the pointer is here. That means The number of turns are of that path, and if we change the point in middle position, then the number of turns are of that path, and if we change the terminal here, then the number of turns of that path. So by changing the pointer, we can change the number of turns, by which we can easily change the flux of the field coil. So we can use this method also. We can use this method also for changing the speed control or field control method. And now today's topic is basically the voltage control method, or the say supply voltage control method. Input voltage control method or supply voltage control method. From the speed equation, what we know that the speed n is equal to d minus IARA by K5. Previously, we thought about armature resistance control and flux control or field control. These two methods already I have discussed. Now today's topic is the input voltage control method. That means we have to don't hamper these two quantity. That means armature resistance and flux, and we have to just change the input voltage. So though the motor is DC type, now can anyone tell me how we change the DC voltage level? What is the method by which we can change the DC voltage level? We have suppose a DC voltage, from that we have to change the voltage level of that DC system. What is the method? Tell me.
So by varying resistance.
By varying resistance, we can change the input voltage. That means you are saying that's a resistance divider. Suppose uh, this is a voltage. We add a variable resistance here. Suppose we add a variable resistance here, and from a pot we get that voltage. This is V output and this is V input. By this method, we can vary the output voltage. You are saying that, Ayush?
Yes, sir.
But the power level, or say the voltage and current level of DC motor is high, so power loss The power losses in this resistance is also high. If the current level, armature current level is high and the voltage is also high, so the power losses is also high. Ayush? So,
Yes, sir.
so tell me, is this method is economical or efficient? That means the resistance divider method is efficient or economical.
No, sir.
So this method is not adopted to change the input voltage control method of speed control method. That means resistance divider method is not adopted. Have you understood why we don't
Yes.
choose this method? Because the power losses in this method is high. So we don't choose this method. So what are the alternative methods? If if the input voltage control method of speed control method, if the nowadays we choose or we say we use a DC chopper. This is called DC chopper, by which we can vary a constant voltage DC voltage to a variable DC voltage. What is the name of that device? Constant DC to variable DC. The name of that device is DC chopper. Nowadays we use this, but previously, or say in 1950 or 1960, at that time this chopper is not available on the market. So at that time, what we do, the method, the name of that method is Ward Leonard method. Ward Leonard method. Nowadays, nowadays we use DC chopper, but in previous days, when the chopper is not available in market, on that day we use Ward Leonard method. And what is the Ward Leonard method? In this method, suppose a we have to control the speed of a DC motor. At that time, what we actually do, let me draw, let me draw the figure. After that, I will explain what will happen. Suppose we have to control the speed of that DC motor. Suppose we have to control the speed of that decimal. So in word Leonard method, what we do actually, in that method we use three machine. This is in motor mode, this is DC motor, and then this is DC generator, and this is an induction motor. We have to change the input voltage of the DC motor. So we have to change the basically this voltage. We have to change that voltage, or say applied voltage in between the input terminal. By varying this input voltage, we can easily control the speed of a DC motor. So what we actually do in this method, this is basically wall Leonard method. This is basically word Leonard method. In this method, what we do actually, we use three machine. One is induction motor, which basically provide the mechanical energy to a DC generator, and the DC generator will produce the DC voltage, and the output of that DC generator is connected to a DC motor. If we vary the generated voltage of DC generator, and we can say this variable voltage is the input voltage of DC motor. Ayush, Khushbu, have you understood this method? समझ में आया आपको? आयुष, खुशबू, दीपक,
So what we are doing by doing this?
actually we are controlling the speed of a DC motor. By this method, what are we actually doing? We are doing the speed control method by changing the input voltage. Which one that motor? This one is the motor whose speed to be controlled by changing the input voltage. What are the input terminal of that motor? These two are say the input terminal. These two are the input terminal. That means we have to apply a voltage on that two terminal which can be variable type. Though in previous days there is no availability of DC chopper, we use this method. In this method, and what and how we actually generate the variable voltage by varying. Suppose what is the equation of induced voltage? Tell me, anyone? Anyone can tell me? Say
N
what is
P
the
phi
P phi N Z
Z
by
by 68.
60A? That means a constant phi into m. If we provide a constant speed, say we can say the generated voltage is proportional to the flux. That means how much flux we create on field. This is basically determine how much the voltage is produced. How much field is created on field, this will determine how much voltage will produce on the armature. If we change the flux of DC generator, that means if we, this is basically the flux, or say the flux is generated on that field coil. Ayush,
Yes, sir.
here the flux will generate. So if we control the voltage of that coil, or say current of that coil, so we can easily control the voltage, or say we can control the generated voltage of the DC generator. Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir.
हम अगर डीसी जनरेटर के फील्ड को चेंज करेंगे तो वोल्टेज जनरेशन चेंज हो जाएगा. The generated voltage will change when we change the flux of DC generator. By changing or by varying the flux of DC generator, we can easily control the generated voltage. If the generated voltage is varies, then the input voltage of DC motor is also varies. If the generated voltage will varies, then the input voltage of DC motor will also vary. Okay, Ayush, have you understood? Khushbu,
So जनरेटेड वोल्टेज को कैसे कंट्रोल करेंगे?
what is the expression of generated voltage? Tell me. Eg is equal to P phi Nz by 60A. P,
यस सर.
Z, A are constant when we design or we create a say machine. At that time, the pole number of conductor and the number of parallel path are constant. So we can write Eg is equal to K phi n. If we provide a constant torque, sorry, if we provide a constant speed, if speed is constant, then Eg is equal to K dash into phi at that time. Have you understood?
यस सर.
Then if we vary the field, then we can vary the generated voltage. If we vary the field of DC generator, how can we vary the field of DC generator? Say, tell me, how can you vary the field? What are the methods?
So by varying field resistance.
By varying field resistance, or you can say by varying field voltage, or you can say by varying number of turns of the field. In previously, we have taught how we control the flux of a field. So by varying flux on field, we can easily control the how much voltage should be generated, or how much voltage we want. We can easily generate that voltage by controlling the field of the DC generator. Am I right?
यस
Ayush,
सर. यस
Deepak,
सर.
खुशबू, समझ में आया कि आपको? देखिए,
यस सर.
मतलब हम अगर फील्ड को, डीसी जनरेटर का फील्ड को अगर कंट्रोल करेंगे तो कितना वोल्टेज प्रोड्यूस होगा वो कंट्रोल हो जाएगा, because we know that Eg is proportional to phi. You can also write this equation Eg proportional to phi. That means if you control the field or flux of DC generator, then you can easily control the generated voltage. And if you control the generated voltage, then you can control the input voltage of motor, because the terminal of generator and motor are connected, because the terminals of the motor and generator are connected. So if we control the generated voltage, then we can control the input voltage of a DC motor. And we have previously said that we have to provide a constant speed, and the constant speed is produced by a AC induction motor. The constant speed is generated by a induction motor, because we have three phase supply. By using this three phase supply to an induction motor, we can produce a speed, or say we can provide mechanical energy to a DC generator. And after that, by varying the field of DC generator, we can vary the generated voltage. And if that generated voltage is applied to a DC motor, then we can easily control the speed of that DC motor. Have you understood, Ayush, Khushbu, Deepak? What is the procedure, or say what is the methodology of wall Leonard method?
Yes, sir.
So कोई अगर मुझे एक्सप्लेन करो कैसे हो रहा है, आयुष एक्सप्लेन करो, समझाओ मुझे। आयुष, tell me the
सर
procedure. Tell me the procedure of wall Leonard method.
सर हम लोग सर डीसी मोटर का सर हमको वोल्ट इनपुट वोल्टेज हमको कंट्रोल करना है, तो फिर थ्री फेज एसी सप्लाई से सर डीसी जनरेटर का हम स्पीड और फील्ड करंट और फ्लक्स हम लोग कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं, जिससे मेरा इनपुट वोल्टेज मेरा कंट्रोल होगा।
हाँ, अगर मोटर का
तो
इनपुट
उससे
वोल्टेज कंट्रोल हो गया तो स्पीड भी कंट्रोल हो गया। If we control the input voltage of DC of that DC motor, then we can easily control the speed of that DC motor.
यस सर।
Okay. And what are the advantages of this method, and what are the disadvantages
पावर
of
लॉस
this
नहीं
method?
होगा।
What are the advantages of this method, and what are the disadvantages of this method? Do you know what is regenerative braking?
नो सर।
Okay. So just know that in this method we can get the inherent regenerative braking. And what is regenerative braking? I will discuss it later. The advantages is regenerative braking we can get inherently. That means we don't have add any circuit or any other device by which we can get the regenerative braking. And the disadvantage, what are the, actually this is the advantages. And another advantages is another advantage is we can control the speed of DC motor very smoothly. We can control the speed of DC motor very smoothly by this method. And what is the, and what, say what is the your desire speed. Suppose our desired speed is 1000 rpm, so we can easily get that speed. Suppose our desired speed is 1050. By varying input, we can easily get that speed. That means the speed variation is very smooth, and what speed you have desired, we can easily get that speed. This is the these are the advantages of this method. And what are the disadvantages of this method? What are the disadvantages of this method?
Sir, it is bulky and too much
Good,
mechanical
good, good. It
components
is
are there.
bulky and and
So मैकेनिकल कंपोनेंट्स बहुत ज़्यादा है सर.
मतलब एक
सर
मशीन को
मेंटेनेंस में
स्पीड
प्रॉब्लम
कंट्रोल
होगा.
करने के लिए, एक मशीन का स्पीड कंट्रोल करने के लिए हमें और दो मशीन की जरूरत पड़ रहा है. To
यस सर.
control the speed of a DC motor, we need another two motor or say another two machine. So the cost of that system is very high. The cost of that system is very high, and the space requirement of that system is also large. समझ में आया? देखिए दो पॉइंट जो मैंने बोला. The initial cost or say the cost of that system is very high, and the space requirement is also large. And though we use a DC generator, that means we have to, or say though there is three machines, so the maintenance procedure is high. That means we have to regularly maintains that, or so the maintenance of that system is we have to do regularly. So you can say this method is basically the not economical, but the efficiency or say the speed control of the DC motor is very smoothly. That's why this method is basically a, you can say this is basically a theoretical method, because the though the cost of that method is huge, we actually don't implement this method, because to control the speed of a DC motor, we have to use another two motor or say two machine. So the total costing of that system is too high. So instead of this actually word Leonard method, we we now use static word Leonard method. Nowadays, instead of using the normal word Leonard method, we use static word Leonard method. What is that? This is our the motor whose speed to be controlled. This is called static wall Leonard method. This is basically a three-phase supply, AC supply. From that we can vary or we get variable DC supply. From a constant AC supply, we get variable DC supply by a converter, fully controlled converter, and this method is called basically static wall Leonard method. This is called static wall Leonard method. Actually, whenever you study the power electronics, at that time you will understand what is this basically, or what that device, what is the function of that device, and how it will work. When you will start the power electronics, at that time you will understand. And now you just understand that this is a basically device by which we can get the voltage from constant AC to variable DC. This is a converter by which we can get the variable DC from a constant AC. This method is basically static Wald-Leonard method. So आयुष, खुशबू, धनीश, दीपक, जीशन, देखिए समझ में आया कि नहीं आपको? Have you understood
Yes, sir.
this method how it will work? असगर, शमशद, जीशन,
Yes, sir.
समझ में आया ये? जीशन,
Yes, sir.
अच्छा जीशन बोलिए कैसे ये काम कर रहा है? बोलिए काम क्या कर रहा है, कैसे काम कर रहा है, और एडवांटेजेस बोलिए, इस मेथड के एडवांटेजेस बोलिए, क्या है एडवांटेजेस? जीशन, जीशन, शमशद, एनीवन, एडवांटेजेस बोलिए, टेल मी एन एडवांटेज ऑफ दिस मेथड. धनीश, धनीश, खुशबू, खुशबू, टेल मी ए एडवांटेज of this method. Tell me an advantage of this method. Khushbu, am I audible to you? Ayush, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
एक advantages बोलिए.
Sir, it is less bulky, inexpensive, and static.
You are saying the advantages of static wall linear method compared to wall linear method.
Yes, sir.
Good. But I have asked you what are the advantages of wall linear method. Your answer is right. The previous one is your right answer. What are the advantages of wall linear method? Ayush?
सर कुछ बताए थे सर, वो भूल गया.
It has inherent regenerative braking, number one. Number two, by this method, we can control the speed of DC motor very smoothly. Write down this point. The advantages of wall linear method. It has inherent regenerative braking. Number two, smooth speed control. Okay. Have you any question regarding this topic?
हेलो सर.
हाँ, आयुष बोलो.
सर वो सर वो प्रैक्टिकल वाला सर, आप एक्सपेरिमेंट नंबर 2 लिखा हुआ सर, तो हम लोग कॉपी में एक्सपेरिमेंट नंबर 1 देके लिखेंगे या फिर 2?
नहीं, एक्सपेरिमेंट नंबर आप लिखेंगे 2, लेकिन सीरियल नंबर लिखेंगे 1.
सीरियल नंबर 1.
हाँ, मतलब जिस सीरियल में आपका लैब होगा वो होगा उसका नंबर, और जो आपका सिलेबस में जो नंबर दिया हुआ है वो होगा एक्सपेरिमेंट नंबर. सीरियल मत
ओके सर.
मतलब आपका जो सीरियल हो रहा है अभी ऑनलाइन है इसीलिए सबका सीरियल नंबर सेम होगा, लेकिन अगर ये ऑफलाइन होता तो ग्रुप में डिवाइड कर देते. ठीक है, मान लीजिए आपका एक्सपेरिमेंट नंबर 2 है, सीरियल नंबर 1, लेकिन वो दूसरा ग्रुप का सीरियल नंबर, तो मान लीजिए होगा एक्सपेरिमेंट नंबर 1 ही उसका सीरियल नंबर 1 हो सकता है, और कोई ग्रुप का सीरियल नंबर 1 जो है वो एक्सपेरिमेंट नंबर 3 भी हो सकता है.
ओके सर.
ओके. हैव यू एनी क्वेश्चन रिगार्डिंग द वर्ली or not method? Have you any question? If you don't have any question regarding the worldly or not method, you may leave. If you don't have any question regarding the worldly or not method, you may leave.
सर अटेंडेंस सर.
So, attendance. ठीक है. आयुष,
यस सर.
जीशान,
यस सर.
खुशबू,
यस सर.
यश,
फ्रेंड सर.
सुमिरन,
प्रेजेंट सर.
समसत,
यस सर.
प्रवीण,
प्रेजेंट सर.
दानिश,
प्रेजेंट सर.
असगर,
यस सर.
और दीपक था ना. आयुष, दीपक था.
यस सर. यस सर.
Okay. Okay, you may leave.